So the name of the talk is Life After the Year of the Return, Lessons from Our Ancestors. My journey actually began on my birthday in 2018. I was talking to Terry, the conference organizer, and we were having this great discussion about me speaking in Ghana at some point in the near future. He talked very enthusiastically about 2019 as being the year of the return. And I said to him, I'm like, hey, what's this year of the return? I've never heard about it. He turns to me and says, the year of the return is the 400th anniversary of the first shipment of slaves to America. When I heard that, the deal was done. I was there. I said yes. I had no idea what I was saying yes to. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know where I was speaking. I didn't know what I would be saying. But I had to be in Ghana in 2019 for the year of the return. Fast forward, it's December 2019. I'm speaking at a TED conference with over 1,000 delegates from around the world. It was amazing to be there with so many wonderful people from the African diaspora. I'll forever be indebted to the conference organizers for making it all happen. So at this point, I'm on a mission. This trip to Ghana is a pilgrimage. I went to 2 services, not 1, but 2 DNA testing services to get as much information as I possibly could about my heritage. One service said that I was 52% Nigerian, 30% Ghanaian, and everything else. Another service said that I originated from the Bamileke tribe in Cameroon. The most impactful castle that I visited was Cape Coast. It is said that the majority of the Africans that were shipped from Cape Coast ended up in the Caribbean. I'm originally from Jamaica, so that was extremely relevant and hit home for me. My experience at the castle was very hard to put into words. As I stood there in the open space of the castle grounds, listening to the unspeakable horrors that took place there, all I could do was even try to imagine the sheer will that it took for people to have the strength to live. One of the best known parts of this property is the door of no return. I walked through the door of no return, which led the slaves out to waiting ships. And after I walked through the door, I remember spending about 30 minutes just looking over the Atlantic Ocean. Just imagining all that they went through. They went through 3 months in a dark dungeon and then got on these ships for the Middle Passage. It's rumored that over 12 million people were actually shipped from those shores. Millions of them died along the way. As I was sitting there and just staring, I realized that one single soul, one brave soul, actually had the will to live so that I could exist today. After 13 months of planning, the most powerful part of the entire trip actually occurred in one split second. After 30 minutes of looking over the ocean, it was getting late, the sun was going down, it was time to go. I casually spun around and walked back the other way through the door of no return. And in that moment, I realized in an instant what had just happened. I had done something that my ancestors were never able to do. Walk the other way through the door. I'd managed to do something that I never would have dreamed would be possible. Could I have returned all those people back to the land that they'd left hundreds of years ago? I really hope so. When I returned home to the US, I was so curious about my people before slavery, before their history before slavery. I wanted to know everything, where they lived, they were like, what did they believe. Number one was that our people have a direct connection to spirit that was very powerful and very important in how they lived their lives. Number two, knowledge of self was absolutely critical in terms of the history, in terms of the development of the person's being, their relationship to everything else. There was such an emphasis on the individual actually learning about themselves and their place in society and their purpose. Number three was the connection, the importance of that connection to community. Connection to community brought abundance and joy. And lastly, the alignment with nature, number four, was critical because the alignment with nature brought that profound sense of well-being. So how is this all relevant to now in the age of racial reckoning and COVID? So I remember when COVID first hit on the West Coast. I was actually living in Oakland, California, in an apartment by myself, when the emergency signals went off on a cell phone and everyone had to go into shelter in place. They said for the next 30 days. In that moment, none of us had been through this in our lifetimes. There was so much anxiety and fear. And I remember sitting there going, oh my goodness, what's going to happen here? And then in that moment, I closed my eyes and just took a deep breath, started to meditate, and actually leaned on the very first principle that I was highlighted in all the research that I was researching and reading at the moment. And in that moment, my whole thoughts went right back to the Cape Coast Castle and Ghana, and remembered that my ancestors had made it through so much worse, and that I would be fine. Like I could get through this. I also realized too, in the silence, that in some ways they had started preparing me for that very moment. So how am I applying all this stuff that I learned? So for connection to spirit, how it's played out is that right now I'm meditating for 1 to 2 hours each day, reading and journaling and listening for guidance, and actually applying the guidance that I'm getting. Number two, community. I'm being so much more intentional about really curating and cultivating intentional gatherings of family and friends, like everyone on Zoom. I'm now doing it across the Caribbean and the United States and Africa and the UK. For knowledge of self, spending lots of time reading and continuing to learn more about African history and African American history. And with the alignment of nature, I took an opportunity to move across the country to Florida, where I'm closer to the Caribbean. Some of the most valuable lessons have actually come from nature for me. I remember recently I was watching the sunrise in Fort Lauderdale, and I'll show an image here that you can see. But it was just so powerful, the inevitability and the strength and of the sun rising. Nothing could stop the sun from rising. It's powering everything. And I realized that in some ways we're like that sun. Just by being ourselves, by knowing our purpose, and knowing that the universe has your back, nothing can stop you. So to recap, what did I learn? One, I learned about strength. I learned that my strength actually comes from a long line of ancestors. They provided me with so many tools that I can use today. I also learned that they made it through so much worse and so through so much adversity. Because of them and inspired by their strength, I know that I can get through this pandemic and all that is around it. I also learned that we're comprised of the past and also we have the choice of the now, meaning that we have all this information and tools that we can put and we can apply to the now to make very productive decisions and choices. My experience in Ghana has really inspired me to live these principles of connecting to community, connecting to spirit, diving into more knowledge of myself and aligning with nature on a daily basis. I invite you to come on this exciting journey with me. Every day, something new unfolds.